Welcome back. Sometimes tension stays manageable until one day it doesn't. Sometimes what feels wrong can be carried quietly for a long time, adjusted to, explained away, worked around, minimized, tolerated, because it's easier than disruption. Until something inside begins to know it can no longer continue in the same way. And sometimes the greatest shift is not the moment when peace arrives. It's the moment you realize you can no longer remain the same. You're listening to The Occult and the Apocalypse, where we explore the hidden and the revealed through patterns, symbolism, and awareness. Not to predict, but to notice, and not to conclude, but to understand. In the last episode, we explored how unresolved tension can begin shaping the way that we live. How friction can enter the body, the environment, relationships, and the nervous system. How something can feel off before anything has fully broken. And how, over time, tension can become difficult to ignore. But tension does not stay neutral forever. Sometimes it quietly asks for patience. Sometimes it asks for honesty. And sometimes it demands change. There comes a point where awareness can no longer comfortably coexist with what is misaligned. Something inside begins knowing before plans are made. Before words are spoken, before any external step has been taken, before anything on the outside looks different. And once that knowing becomes clear, a threshold begins to appear. In the last episode, I spoke about a short season where an unexpected bird came into my home. It brought calm to a tense space, and in strange ways, it mirrored truths that I was beginning to see. The day that I decided that if this bird survived, I would keep it, I ended up experiencing something that would change the course of my life forever. I went to the store and purchased a cage for the bird and continued to call it by the name of my grandmother's bird. And when I got home, I walked out onto my back porch and saw something that confirmed what I already felt, but hadn't fully admitted to myself. My husband was there, sending a message. And what I saw in that message made it clear what I already knew. My husband was seeing someone else. I didn't confront it in that moment. I just went back inside. But something inside of me had shifted. Later, while I was alone with the bird, talking to it, thinking of my grandmother, I experienced a clarity that felt like she was speaking to me. Like she was tied into this moment, encouraging me to take a step toward the woman who came before me and towards the future I wanted for my daughter. It kind of felt like I was being challenged by her. And I was finally understanding something I already knew. I could not continue living inside something that no longer fit. not only for myself, but because I was afraid that my daughter would grow up believing that this was what love looked like. And because I knew the woman before me had crossed difficult thresholds so that I could have choices that they didn't easily have, at some point it stopped feeling like a private discomfort and started feeling more like a responsibility to act. It was a weekend, but I made up my mind that I would call out of work on Monday and I would file for divorce. The morning after I decided to file for divorce, I found the bird deceased in its brand new cage. It had been with me 3 days and then was gone. What followed on Monday looked nothing like dramatic courage. It was numbness, paperwork, finding documents, standing in line, paying fees, filling out forms, taking practical steps while my emotions lagged behind. Sometimes action begins before peace arrives. Sometimes your life changes before your nervous system catches up. I was scared. I tried to talk myself out of it. Part of me believed that I wouldn't go through with it. Part of me wanted familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. Part of me wanted just one more reason to wait. But I kept being brought back to that same knowing that I was not meant to keep carrying what was never mine to carry. It almost felt like this bird came into my life to give me this message, to help me take that step. And then it left when it was time, when it was certain I would not back out. Every time I thought I would hesitate, this beautiful, now deceased bird would flash into my mind's eye, like a whisper to keep going. After filing, there was relief, then fear, then strength, sometimes all in the same day. I was relieved that the moment had begun. I had fear of what would come next, and strength was beginning quietly underneath both. For several days, I moved carefully. I kept my distance. I did not want to say too much too soon. I wasn't going to be ready until it was time. I had arranged for someone to come serve my ex-husband, and that's when he would find out. And when that private knowing finally became external reality, the moment when my truth was known by now all of us, something changed again. Not because everything was healed and not because fear disappeared, but because what I knew internally had now crossed into the visible world. There was another witness, another point of reality. Something had shifted from internal truth into lived consequence. Now, psychology often recognizes that people can remain inside misaligned environments long after awareness begins. Not because they're weak, but because fear, attachment, uncertainty, identity, and nervous system conditioning can delay movement. And behavioral economics also suggests that people often stay committed to costly situations because they've already invested so much time, energy, hope, identity. This is sometimes called sunk cost thinking. We hesitate to leave because leaving can feel like losing everything already given. Loss aversion works similarly. People often fear the uncertain future more than the familiar pain they already know. So they stay with what hurts, simply because it's known. And this is why clarity and action often arise in stages. Many people know before they move. Many people awaken before they act. Many people see clearly long before they are ready to reorganize their lives around that truth. Sociology often shows that private household decisions eventually shape public culture. When enough people quietly reject unhealthy norms, the norm itself begins to weaken. When enough people choose healthier boundaries, boundaries become more accepted. When enough people stop tolerating what once seemed normal, culture begins to change. And this doesn't happen in only one home. It happens across homes, across relationships, across families, across workplaces, and across belief systems. People quietly reach thresholds every day. Someone realizes the pace of life they accepted is no longer sustainable. Someone reaches burnout and understands that exhaustion is not success. Someone questions a belief system that no longer feels aligned. Someone recognizes money pressure has distorted what matters most. Someone sees what once felt normal was really only just familiar. And someone understands that peace maintained through self-abandonment is not peace at all. And when enough private thresholds are crossed, collective momentum begins. Homes change. Lives change. Children receive different models. Relationships begin differently. Communities become more honest. Old patterns weaken. Control weakens. Domination weakens. Consumerism without meaning weakens. Speed without wisdom weakens. And what might begin growing stronger? Faith, trust, discernment, connection, mutual support, a deeper understanding that we may already have much of what we need if we learn how to live with one another differently. or that we already know what we need to do, and the world around us is looking to confirm it if we would only look for the signs. If you're in a season like this, you may not feel brave. You may feel numb, afraid, confused, delayed, exhausted, sometimes even foolish. You may know what needs to change and still feel unready. But none of those feelings erase clarity. Sometimes courage looks less like certainty and more like taking the next practical step. Sometimes courage is paperwork. Sometimes courage is silence until the time is right. Sometimes courage is saying yes to truth before comfort arrives. Sometimes courage is refusing to go back to sleep once you've been awakened. Because when a threshold is crossed, something does not end. Something also begins. Truth becomes action. Awareness becomes movement. And what was once internal begins reshaping life itself. And often, what comes next is not only relief, but something begins returning. Strength, meaning, self-respect, wisdom, a different future. Sometimes gifts can only be carried back after the threshold has been crossed. So, what in your life you may already know that something needs to change, even if your emotions are not fully caught up yet. And if many others are also reaching that same knowing quietly within their own lives, how many homes, how many futures, how many patterns might begin changing in a positive direction at the same time? But I'll leave that for you to think about. Thank you for being here with me and helping me take the occult and the apocalypse and see it as just the hidden and the revealed. Come back next week when we explore what returns after change and the collective gift one journey can carry. I'll see you there.